So I thought it might be a really interesting case study just to talk about this whole Colin the Caterpillar, Cuthbert the Caterpillar fiasco, media storm, social media viral sensation this week. And essentially, if you haven't seen this, what came down to is that in the UK, you have lots of different supermarkets. Marks and Spencer's have been established for 120 plus years, very kind of prestigious. They position themselves at like the premium end of the market. And they obviously have a range of novelty cakes, as a lot of kind of food manufacturers and supermarkets do as well. There was a court case and it went to the High Court. At least they launched an intellectual property claim in the High Court against Aldi for copying their design, their trademarks. And actually what was quite funny is that it created such a storm because some people viewed it as being massively overkill for Marks and Spencer's. What's the big deal? It's just a cake. But actually I can see both sides of it. So what I wanted to do was talk about it today to kind of just, I thought it was interesting. So what was quite interesting, so supermarkets sell products in the same way that any business sells a product or a service. The more intellectual property that you believe your product has, and that could be offshore energy equipment, which is a lot of my kind of background, but it could be cakes, it could be design rights, it could be anything. There is always a balance between, as a company, how do you protect it? Should you protect it? And then what's the best course of action to take? Both from a moral, legal standpoint, which there might be letters of the law, what is correct, what is not correct to do. But then you also almost have to make a commercial decision on, is it worth chasing? Is it worth following up? But then actually largely to do with this one, there's a massive PR angle to it as well, which I'm going to kind of talk through. So Marks and Spencer's launched this injunction in the High Court to basically ask Aldi to, or demand Aldi remove the product from the shelves and actually never sell similar products in the future. Aldi actually responded, and I'll touch on it in a second, at some social media, and actually it rarely started to play out, but it was on TV. And again, M&S rarely took the stance of, we're a prestigious brand, we've done this for a long time, we need to protect our intellectual property. And in their social media where a lot of this played out, they claimed we're the original, we're the best. That was their whole kind of point. Aldi replied, they kind of got all the other supermarkets together and tried to say, look, everyone's doing this, free Cuthbert. And again, what was quite funny is how both the social media teams for all the supermarkets jumped on it and really kind of made it a thing, which is great PR and great publicity. But likewise, I think someone within Aldi would have actually thought, you know what, we have been caught out here. Aldi do have form for copying other people's products. A few years ago, they did Brewdog, which is a bespoke beer kind of brand, all to do with IPAs and kind of that kind of thing, craft beers. And Aldi actually copied one of their designs, one of their IPAs, to the point where it was that bad and that blatant. Brewdog had the decision, which I think they played very well, is that they knew if they were to compete in the courts against such a big company, it would cost them a lot of money, it'd take a lot of time, and actually would they necessarily be better off because of it? So what Brewdog did in that instance was actually to launch their own new brand, ripping off Aldi, if that makes sense. And so my point is that Aldi have form for actually doing this and actually ripping off other people's products in the past. But what someone would have thought, actually, this company, obviously Marks and Spencer's now, not Brewdog, have taken it a lot more seriously and caused the High Court injunction to kind of basically take the product off the shelves. So what was quite clever in some ways is that someone would have made the decision to say, actually, look, how do we get out of this? But actually, how do we get some press off the back of it as well? So one of the things that they did, they tweeted out, how about we call it quits? All the money that we save through not getting the lawyers involved, we'll donate to charity, etc. Morning, Simon, as always. I was waiting to see if you were going to pop up, but thank you for joining me. And actually what Aldi have tried to do, which is actually quite clever, is to change the narrative, change the public perception away from, to diffuse their legal battle, which they probably would lose because it's blatant what they've kind of done, and almost steer it in terms of get public opinion on side to make people think badly of Marks and Spencer's in terms of actually they're pursuing something which doesn't really matter, and instead of doing that, should they donate the money to charity? And what I just thought was a really interesting moral dilemma, because actually I can see it from both sides. if you're Marks and Spencer's, you need to protect your products, but to the point where often what this does, it sends a message to everyone else that if you infringe their intellectual property or design rights or products or whichever, they will come after you. And almost it's a way that, although this one actually, in terms of PR, has swung actually more in favour of Aldi. Aldi are now seen as more favourable than Marks and Spencer's. Marks and Spencer's have gone down in people's estimations and kind of brand value. But what's interesting is that they've also put a flag in the sand for the next 10 years, 5 years, to say, look, if you copy our products, we will come after you in the court, which is actually quite a clever thing to do. Aldi are trying to get out of it by using social media and public opinion, because again, people, a lot of the general public just think it's just a cake, but what's the big deal? I think they're trying to get out of it by using clever social media with the whole free Cuthbert thing. But I would love to know your comments. Are you team M&S? Are you team Aldi? What's your viewpoint on it? And actually it'd be interesting to see how this plays out, because Marks and Spencer's could continue the legal case, but obviously that'll have significant cost to it, and it could actually have future brand impact. Aldi are kind of on the roller coaster. They've got form for it. Hopefully that they might learn the lesson that they can't just copy other people's products, but maybe that's their whole thing, that they don't care. But actually they could also take the view of the longer this runs, the more publicity they get, which actually could be worth a lot more than the cost of the court case. And I guarantee there will be someone somewhere having that discussion about how this plays out. But I would love to know your opinion on free Cuthbert, free Colin, the whole kind of thing. In some ways it's silly, but in some ways it's really important. But then likewise, almost one of the lessons to learn is that for any company, you always have the discussions, when I talk to my clients about patents and patent rights, the worry always is that you have different companies and places around the world that are known to copy. China is one of them. But then likewise, if a major multi-billion-pound company blatantly infringes your patent rights, etc., and this has been known to happen, could you actually almost fight it? Because they would just outmuscle you in the courts. They would make you go bust in the point that they win. So there's always the balance on patents and IP and stuff on what's the best way to do. And actually just kind of thinking out loud is that one of the things I'm going to start to do is interview and talk to people. So these won't be live, they'll just be pre-recorded, basically experts on different topics. So one could be on immigration, employment law, one could be on patents, might do one on app development, etc. But it's really trying to share the knowledge and almost people that you could speak to if this ever comes up. So I just thought it was an interesting kind of case study to talk about.